In Resident Evil 2, we were introduced to Ada Wong, a corporate spy working for an unnamed competitor of Umbrella. She was sent to get her hands on any biological weapons and specimens of Umbrella, but the moment she meets Leon for the first time, she tells him that she is searching for her boyfriend John. Later, she encounters the wife of William Birkin, Annette Birkin, and she informs Ada that her boyfriend John is dead. He became one of the zombies in the Umbrella lab that was located at the Arklay Forest. Not much is said about John in the Resident Evil games, but back when George A. Romero was given the chance to make the first Resident Evil film, in his script, John was going to have a part in the beginning of the movie, maintaining his relationship with Ada, but he would also end up getting killed in the opening. He was going to be known as John Marcus instead of John Clemens, and when Resident Evil 2 was on the works, John Clemens was originally meant to have a somewhat larger role in the game. He was going to help the main character defeat the Tyrant at the end of the game by giving you an antivirus weapon that was capable of defeating the Tyrant. So, who is John Clemens? Well, if you look back in Resident Evil 1, in the Umbrella Corporation, there was a file you needed to read in order to solve one of the puzzles. This puzzle was the Adam and Eve puzzle, including the puzzle needed to access one of the Umbrella computers. This was the first time we ever heard from John Clemens. His file is actually a letter that was meant for Ada Wong. But for what, you may ask? Well, let's take a look at the Resident Evil comic book that revolves around the events that took place in the Arklay Mountains. Here we see for ourselves who John was, and what his intentions were for the company and Ada Wong. In the comics, he was known as John Fay. John Clemens was a researcher in the Chicago branch of Umbrella, but then sometime in 1994, he ended up being transferred to the Arklay laboratory as the successor of William Birkin. He became the new head researcher of the Arklay laboratory, and soon afterwards he'd voice his disapproval over the experiments that were being conducted in the lab. Sadly, he would only be threatened to stay in line whenever he spoke out against his disapprovals. John wasn't working to make bioorganic weapons. He hoped that someday his work could lead to a significant breakthrough in cancer research by increasing the subject's strength and healing abilities. But most test subjects would actually begin deteriorating after being infected with the T-virus. He never intentionally worked with human test subjects, and this is why you end up finding infected dogs, sharks, and other creatures that become more threatening than zombies. John tried to get Albert Wesker to give Ada Wong a security clearance so she could join his team, as he was in love with her. John was invested on his work. After high school, he spent a majority of his life working on bioengineering and the properties of white and red blood cells, which piqued the interest of Umbrella. But since he never got the funding necessary for his research, or at least the approval of some bureaucrat, Umbrella stepped in and offered him private funding so he could continue the research that he started at BIT. In May 10th of 1998, John mentions that after introducing the T-virus into one of the dog test subjects referred to as Subject MA39, the test subject has shown signs of physical deterioration and unprovoked aggression. Subject MA39 was infected with the T-virus in the previous month, but they managed to keep it under control by using sedatives. But then, 6 days later, John realizes that there is nothing but bad news he's discovering. In his notes, he lets Ada Wong know that he is now glad that he couldn't get her to join his team, because the T-virus has turned Subject MA39 into some kind of monster. The physical deterioration gave way to an unexplained increase in strength and aggression that seemed to be linked to a decrease in brainwave activity. It even broke its restraints and escaped from the lab. And just to make things worse, John starts coming down with what appears to be some kind of flu. At least that's what he believes. But seeing as his thumb is showing signs of physical deterioration, it is very likely that he too has become infected with the T-virus. But things have been too hectic that he doesn't have time to take care of himself, and since Subject MA39 became an aggressive monster that even escaped, this has him too worried to even sleep. He feels run down all the time, and his body is beginning to show the results. The next day, he checks up on another subject referred to as Subject FI3, the Great White Shark. Subject FI3 was infected with the T-virus on April 6, and all vital signs remained uninfected up until May 17th. This time, the subject showed signs of physical deterioration, including a rapid loss of epidermal layers. John wonders why has it taken this subject so long to be affected by the T-virus, but if they can determine why each subject reacts differently, then maybe this could lead to a breakthrough. The next time John writes to Ada is on May 31st of 1998, 21 days after he started seeing signs of infection on himself. He writes, "I'm scared. Somehow, people in the compound have been exposed to the T-virus. I don't understand how this could have happened, but it has. I'm starting to feel paranoid. Have I been infected? Who are the strange men I can feel watching over me? What is the T-002 subject? Have they tricked me into working on some kind of biological weapon? We're testing everyone in the compound. We'll know the results within a week. I won't be able to live with myself if you've been infected by something I worked on. I love you, Ada." 8 days go by. John writes one last letter for Ada. He writes, "By the time you read this, I'll be something different. Today's testing turned out positive, just as I expected. Ada, you're not infected, and I hope you never will be. Take the material in the visual data room and go to the power room to operate the triggering system before you escape, and make all this public through the media. All the locks can be opened by the security system. You can access the system if you log in with my name from the terminal in the small lab and enter your name as the password. To unlock the door at B2 where the visual data room is located, you'll need to access it with our names first and then enter another password. I've written the code below. I'm sure you'll understand it easily, and this is my last hope. If you find me completely changed, please kill me yourself." Days go by, and John tries to write one last letter for Ada, but from the looks of his spelling, you can tell that the T-virus is just about to completely take over him. He writes, "Dear Ada, I sorry. I try help. But before he could finish, someone enters the room. He turns around, revealing that he's already become a zombie. He shoves the chair he was sitting on out of the way, and you can notice signs of rigor mortis. Maybe he spent most of his days sitting on that chair, not moving at all, until someone shows up. The person standing on the entrance of the room appears to be a woman. For John, he could only hope that it's Ada Wong. Seeing her may be the best way to go, as he loved her, and wanted it to be her that puts him to rest. Being in his condition, there's a chance that he couldn't recognize her, but it's not Ada Wong. It's none other than Jill Valentine. John has fully become infected with the T-virus, but he shockingly still has enough control to say, "Help me." It doesn't appear as if Jill understood what he was saying, as she quickly aims her shotgun with one arm and shoots John twice, killing him, but most importantly, putting him out of his misery. Jill had no idea who he was, and after seeing the kind of man John Clemens was, his tragic end would have been somewhat comforting if he at least got to see Ada one last time. If Ada was the one who showed up and pulled the trigger, maybe then she would have felt some sort of decency over the loss of her boyfriend. Because seeing as Ada Wong was introduced as a spy working for a rival company to Umbrella, this leaves you to believe that she wasn't John's girlfriend because she wanted to be in a relationship with him. Knowing her personality, her mission, and the fact that she quickly becomes the love interest of Leon moments after they meet each other, it's very obvious that she only got close to John so she could get closer to Umbrella and report to her superiors. But seeing as John is never mentioned by Ada after the events of Resident Evil 2, means that John was not only being deceived by Umbrella, but by his own girlfriend as well. It may only be my opinion, but the sources sure as hell indicate that both Umbrella and Ada used him all along.